Ladies and gentlemen, there's something they don't want you to know. Something so powerful it flips the entire game. It puts the control back where it belongs, not in manipulation, not in pretense, but in truth. Once men truly understand this, not only does the dynamic shift, but the masks many women wear start to fall off, and suddenly they can no longer manipulate, deceive, or play the same game they used to. For far too long, men have been conditioned to believe that a woman's physical appearance is the ultimate prize, the final destination, the end, all of what makes her worthy. Society, media, even the most casual conversations among peers, have embedded this message so deeply that most men don't even realize how much of their value system has been shaped by what they see rather than what they experience. But let's go deeper than just beauty, because the truth is, it's not the beauty itself that holds power over men, it's how it controls their attention. The likes, the stares, the compliments, the obsession, the pursuit, it all feeds into a system where women are empowered, not because of who they are, but because of how much attention they can command. And that's where the real control lies. Attention is currency. It is the most valuable resource in today's world, and the person who controls it controls the room. When a man gives his attention freely, without discernment, without standards, without intention, he's handing over the keys to his power. And what does a woman do with that kind of control? Most will use it to manipulate, to inflate their own sense of value, to test limits, to play games they've learned from a young age that they can win as long as they keep you watching, chasing, proving. But the moment a man becomes conscious of this pattern, the moment he realizes that every view, every DM, every act of validation is energy, his energy, being directed towards someone who may not even deserve it, something inside him changes. He becomes selective. He begins to question not just what he sees, but what he feels. He no longer gets mesmerized by the surface. He starts reading the energy, observing the intentions, noticing the inconsistencies between words and actions. And when that happens, when he reclaims his attention and places it only where it is earned, the power dynamic begins to shift. Because a woman who has been used to getting effortless attention will now find herself uncertain, confused, even insecure when that attention disappears. She begins to wonder why it's not working on you. She questions what makes you different, and here's the beautiful truth. What makes you different is that you've woken up. You've stopped feeding a system that thrives on your emotional impulse. You've chosen control over reaction, and in doing so, you disrupt the entire illusion. You see, many women have built identities not on who they are, but on how many men respond to them. Their self-worth is entangled in likes, comments, text messages, the chase, the drama, the constant affirmation that they are wanted, needed, pursued. But when a man with awareness steps in, when he doesn't just fall in line, when he doesn't give validation without cause, when he requires more than a pretty face and a well-filtered story, the mirror is held up. And most can't handle their own reflection, because now they're forced to actually bring something to the table: substance, character, emotional intelligence, stability, softness without manipulation, strength without performance. And most of all, now they're forced to realize that the man they used to control no longer exists. It's a hard pill to swallow, but the reality is that many women today don't actually want equality in the way they claim. What they want, often subconsciously, is advantage disguised as empowerment. They want the freedom of independence without the burden of accountability. They want to be respected like men, but protected like little girls. They want the benefits of traditional gender roles when it suits them: doors opened, bills paid, emotional support given without question, while discarding the responsibilities that come with those roles when it becomes inconvenient. It's not about partnership for many. It's about having the upper hand without ever being called out for the imbalance. You see it everywhere, in dating, in relationships, in conversations about gender dynamics. A man is expected to be a provider, a protector, emotionally available, yet stoic and strong. He must earn her trust, prove his intentions, show consistency, and often give more than he receives. But when you flip the script and ask the same of her, when you hold her to an equal standard, when you say, "What do you bring to my life besides your presence?" suddenly it's labeled as toxic, controlling, or misogynistic. But the truth is, a real partnership cannot thrive on double standards. A relationship where only one person is expected to show up fully while the other coasts on entitlement is a relationship doomed to collapse. And once men begin to see this pattern for what it is, not a flaw in women, but a flaw in how the system has conditioned them, everything starts to shift. Because now, instead of constantly proving themselves, men begin to evaluate. Instead of chasing, they begin to observe. And what they often find is that the women who scream the loudest about equality are rarely willing to build, to sacrifice, or to contribute in ways that go beyond the surface. They want the title of strong, independent woman, yet still expect a man to carry the emotional and financial weight of the relationship. They want partnership, but only on their terms, terms where accountability is optional, where vulnerability is one-sided, and where expectations only flow in one direction. It's a tough truth to accept, but once a man sees through the illusion, he can no longer unsee it. He realizes that being a man isn't about bending over backwards to meet one-sided expectations. It's about setting a standard and refusing to lower it for the sake of temporary validation. He stops apologizing for wanting reciprocity. He stops feeling guilty for expecting emotional maturity, honesty, loyalty, and growth from the women he invests in. And that's when everything changes. That's when the excuses no longer work, the manipulations no longer land, and the games start to fall flat. Because now he sees clearly that love without accountability is manipulation in disguise. And in this clarity, he no longer settles for the illusion of partnership. He only accepts what is real, what is balanced, what is mutual. And when a woman is truly ready for that, when she's done with the entitlement, done with the victimhood, done with expecting more than she's willing to give, then she stops seeking advantage and starts choosing alignment. But until then, the man who knows his value will no longer entertain the fantasy. He will no longer fund the imbalance with his time, energy, and heart. He chooses to move differently. He speaks less and watches more. He loves with intention, not desperation. He leads with purpose, not performance. And in doing so, he no longer becomes easy to access, easy to deceive, or easy to use. There's something deeply embedded in the modern woman's psyche that many people tiptoe around, but it's time to say it plainly. Validation is her drug of choice. The high she gets from being desired, praised, noticed, chased, and complimented is one many won't admit, but it runs the show. Social media has only intensified this addiction. Every heart reaction, every fire emoji under her picture, every man who doubles back in her DM feeds the belief that she is wanted, valuable, untouchable. But here's the twist. Most of that validation is not rooted in real connection. It's rooted in illusion. And because of that, it becomes addictive in the worst way. She needs more of it constantly to feel the same rush. The compliments must increase, the attention must remain steady, and the silence between validations must be minimal. Otherwise, she starts to panic, to question her worth, to reach for the next source of that sweet external approval. It becomes a game of feeding insecurity while masking it as confidence. And the tragic part is that most men play into this game without even knowing it. They hand out validation like candy, hoping it'll make her see them, like them, choose them. But in reality, all it does is deepen her dependence on being worshipped while lowering the value of the attention itself. When validation is given freely, without standards, without intention, without discernment, it loses its power. A woman can post a picture and get 100 comments saying, "Gorgeous, queen, take my heart," but none of it matters because it wasn't earned. It was expected, it was automatic, and when something becomes expected, it becomes invisible. But here's the power shift: when a man decides to stop being the dealer, when he stops handing out compliments just because he's captivated by the surface, everything starts to change. She begins to notice. She begins to question why he's not reacting like the others. She wonders why he's not affirming her like everyone else. And in that moment, she loses the control she thought she had. Not because he disrespected her, not because he belittled her, but because he became immune to the performance. You see, when you stop validating women who haven't shown you depth, consistency, or effort, you force clarity into the interaction. You create space for real connection instead of surface-level games. The attention you give becomes rare and therefore valuable, and only those who are secure within themselves will be able to sit in that space with you without trying to manipulate it. But for those who thrive on constant reassurance, for those whose confidence crumbles without external noise, the silence becomes too loud. They try harder, they perform more, they push boundaries, and eventually they either level up or exit. And either outcome serves you, because a man who understands the weight of his attention doesn't give it to everyone. He doesn't comment on everything. He doesn't chase just because she's beautiful. He observes. He evaluates. He engages only when there's substance, and that kind of energy is rare. That kind of energy cannot be manipulated. It's the man who doesn't need to validate who holds the real power, not because he's withholding out of spite, but because he understands that his words mean something. His presence means something. His time is not free. His praise is not a reward for simply existing. And once you move in that energy, you'll see how quickly the dynamic changes. You'll see who's there for real connection and who's only there for the high. You'll separate the genuine from the performative, the secure from the addicted, the grounded from the attention. Starved, there is nothing more magnetic, more unshakable, and more liberating than a man who knows his purpose. A man who is deeply rooted in who he is, where he's going, and what he stands for becomes immune to distraction. He's no longer swayed by beauty with no character, no longer tempted by drama disguised as desire, no longer manipulated by silence, moods, or games designed to test his emotional stability. Because a man with purpose doesn't have time to be tested. He's too busy building, too busy growing, too busy becoming. And when a man gets into that zone, when he steps fully into his masculine energy and begins to align his life with his mission, everything around him begins to recalibrate. People treat him differently. Women view him differently. He becomes less accessible, not because he's arrogant, but because he's focused. He doesn't chase approval because he already approves of himself. He doesn't beg to be chosen because he's already chosen his path, and in that energy he becomes powerful. Purpose creates clarity. It silences the noise. When a man has direction, he doesn't entertain women who bring chaos into his world. He doesn't fall for the seductive trap of potential. He wants partnership, not performance. He doesn't invest his time, energy, or emotions in women who only offer beauty, mood swings, or emotional manipulation wrapped in femininity. He's not moved by tears that have no depth behind them or by apologies that come without changed behavior. He watches, he measures, he chooses carefully, and that careful choosing isn't out of fear, it's out of wisdom. Because a man who has built something understands how quickly the wrong woman can destroy it. He understands that love without alignment is a distraction, that desire without discipline is a liability, and that peace is the most valuable currency he owns. The more purpose-driven a man becomes, the more emotionally sovereign he is. That means he no longer gets pulled into emotional whirlpools created to provoke a reaction. He doesn't respond to passive-aggressive comments, stonewalling, or manipulation tactics meant to throw him off course. He sees through it, not because he's cold, but because he's clear, and in that clarity, He becomes untouchable in all the right ways. Because now it's no longer about impressing women. It's about protecting his peace. It's no longer about chasing validation. It's about maintaining momentum. He becomes less available to nonsense and more available to what nurtures him, grows him, builds him. And that shift alone removes 90% of the distractions that keep average men stuck. You see, women can sense when a man is grounded. They can feel it in his tone, his silence, his posture, his choices. They know when a man can't be rattled, and that energy either attracts those who are secure or exposes those who are not. Most women aren't used to a man who doesn't need them to feel like a man who doesn't require a relationship to feel whole, a man who doesn't lose himself to gain someone else. That kind of man isn't just rare, he's revolutionary, and when he shows up, the games end, the performances collapse, because now she has to meet him where he is. And where he is not easily reached, not because he's trying to be difficult, but because he's elevated. And elevation requires a different kind of energy, a kind that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't settle for pretty over peace, for attention over alignment, for chaos over calm, for connection over control. Masculine energy, in its purest and most grounded form, does not chase, it attracts. It does not beg to be seen, it commands presence without noise. It doesn't convince, it simply is. And when a man embodies true masculine energy, something shifts not only within him, but in how the world responds to him. He becomes a stabilizing force, calm, rooted, deliberate. He's not reactive, he's responsive. He doesn't speak just to fill silence, he speaks with weight, and he doesn't act to gain approval. He acts from alignment with who he truly is. Women can feel this energy even before he opens his mouth. It's in his presence, in his pace, in how unbothered he is by attention that isn't earned, in how little he seeks validation, in how deeply he trusts himself. And when a woman encounters this energy, she cannot manipulate it, she cannot control it, she cannot lead it in circles. Because this is the kind of man who knows exactly what he wants and exactly what he doesn't want. And he has no fear of walking away from anything that doesn't align with his peace, his purpose, or his principles. Most women have become used to being pursued endlessly, even when they offer little in return. They're used to men auditioning, overextending, proving their worth before a woman has even demonstrated that she's safe, consistent, or emotionally available. This is the cultural conditioning that's been normalized for years, a dynamic where women are the prize and men are the contestants. But when a man stands in his masculine energy, he no longer plays that game. He no longer views a woman as the destination. He sees her as a potential companion for the journey, and only if she's aligned. He's not looking to be impressed by beauty alone, because beauty is everywhere. He's looking for depth, for softness with strength, for a woman who is not just performative but real. And that's a rare thing. This kind of man does not move from desperation. He doesn't need to be needed. He doesn't confuse attention for connection or drama for desire. His self-worth isn't dependent on how many women want him. His identity is rooted in who he is, not who he's with. And that is the energy that shifts the entire dynamic. Women who are used to getting by on charm or looks find themselves disarmed around this kind of man. Not because he's cold, but because he's clear. Not because he doesn't see her beauty, but because he's not blinded by it. He sees past the highlight reel. He notices what's beneath the surface. And if what he finds isn't grounded, he simply steps away, not with anger, not with drama, but with stillness and certainty. The feminine energy that is truly ready to receive a man like this does not try to outdo him, compete with him, or control him. She flows with him. She respects his leadership not because she is weak, but because she is wise enough to recognize strength when she sees it. And for the women who are not ready, his presence feels like a challenge because it exposes everything they have not yet healed. That's what real masculine energy does. It doesn't overpower, it reveals. It doesn't chase chaos, it invites peace. It doesn't demand submission. It inspires it. So when a man stops chasing, when he stops pouring into those who haven't shown they can hold space for him, when he no longer gives energy just because someone is attractive or available, he reclaims his crown. And in that energy, he no longer becomes accessible to women who thrive on confusion, emotional inconsistency, or manipulation. He becomes a mirror that reflects whether someone is ready for real love or still addicted to the performance of it. They begged me not to tell you this because once you know, you'll never be the same again. You'll stop chasing what looks good and start choosing what feels right. You'll stop asking, "What can I do to impress her?" and start asking, "Does she align with the man I'm becoming?" And when you do that, the game isn't just over, it becomes yours, because once men know this, the illusion is finished, the pedestal collapses, and suddenly, women can no longer hide behind the masks. So choose to see clearly, choose to rise above the noise, and most importantly, choose you, because when you do, the right woman won't try to finish you, she'll build with you.